Thank you, everyone, for coming to today's Dean Speaker event. We do this usually on a monthly basis. Today's session is going to be about career pathways and journeys, and we've got a pretty distinguished panel of people here that are going to talk about their career progression, how they got where they did. But I want to just go ahead and thank you for coming, and I want to reiterate that coming to these events is not supposed to be something that's required of you. This is something where you should come and want to experience where you're going to be at some point in your life from a career perspective. The people we bring in are leaders in the field. They're in roles that I think you all probably want to get to at some point. So when you come into these events, this is your opportunity to network and talk to people that are going to help you visualize where you're going to be at some point. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Rob Loy. I've been here at GCU for almost 5 years now. One of my favorite things to do is to bring the connection between industry and students together, and the CCE has been a great home over the last 2 years that we've been on campus. We do our best to make these as available as possible. We also have opportunities for career events, the career fair, resume workshops. There's a lot of group activities and club activities that happen on campus. All are designed to get you what you need to be successful. I'll share my career story, and then we're going to meet our panel and we can hear their career story. I went to college to become a lawyer, and I failed my first law class. I decided I wanted to do something different, so I found the easiest degree program I could, which is communication. In Y2K, somebody said, hey, why don't you become a programmer? You can make a lot of money. So I transitioned from communications into software development, worked my way up, been in multiple roles over my career. And at the end, not the end, but like 5 years ago, I decided I had enough with the technology piece and I wanted to share it with the next generation, with all you. So I moved into education here at Grand Canyon. You're going to hear probably a pretty common theme that everyone's journey is going to be different. At one point, I was a mall Santa. So, I mean, that was just one of those things you kind of throw out there, right? I'm not even old enough to be Santa Claus, but anyway. So, some of these people I know very well up on stage, and we will probably have some things that maybe we shouldn't share, Slade. But with that, let's go ahead and meet our panel.
All right, wonderful. So, Darrick Harter, I am a cybersecurity architect and solution architect for MUFG. I think my current position is I'm a vice president for what's called cloud collaboration and data. I guess career-wise for me was 25, 26 years ago. I started back in the dial-up days at an ISP and basically did networking. I wasn't sure what I was going to do actually after high school. I got a job there building computers and found it fun. I probably didn't know where it was going to lead. I certainly didn't know it was going to lead me to where I'm at now. But what I did learn along the way is just to keep learning new things was probably my most important lesson. I probably worked in every vertical imaginable at this point. I've done everything from federal work for contractors for things whenever I was a contractor. I've done healthcare, finance, all sorts of things. I wasn't a mall Santa, unfortunately, at any point in time, but there's still time.
I wonder if there's a degree program at GCU for mall Santas. Is there?
I don't know. I think it's in demand, right?
Is it?
Yeah. Maybe I will. Yeah, we'll have a certificate program. We'll call that. So.
Excellent. All right. You want me to go next? No. We'll go to my left.
That's me. So one of the questions that we were asked was, when did you know you wanted to be in IT? My question to the audience is, I guess, how many freshmen, sophomores do we have in the audience today? How about now? Do you guys know that you want to be in IT? Okay, all right. That's fair enough, because I was in a very similar boat. When I was in college, I unfortunately was working a full-time job and going to college, but I started out down at the U of A in their school of pharmacy, and I spent 4 years in that program and decided I wanted out. And through the job that I had, I was able to, I was actually working for an accounting firm, and I was nothing more than a courier. and worked on, a few little tiny, odds and ends for them. And one of them was actually a document management system. And they wanted me to learn how to code on, I don't know if you guys remember what 286 processor PCs were and MS-DOS and all that stuff, but that's what we worked on. And that turned out to be a career-changing move for me. I basically switched schools, went to the business school there at the U of A and graduated in MIS and business economics. So that was kind of when I knew, but I really had no idea going into college, and I spent a lot of time in college just to pivot after making that move.
All right, now me? Okay. I'm sure you can hear me. I have a pretty loud voice. I do quite a bit of public address announcing. So I was just telling Robert I did a swim meet this weekend. So my voice might be a little out there. But my name is Chad Johnson. I'm a technology director at State Farm. Boring insurance stuff at State Farm. No, I don't work at the stadium. And no, I don't know Jake, just so you know. And I did not wear khakis today. So I wanted to get all that out there to begin with. So my story is going to be a little different than these two gentlemen sitting next to me. I've been at State Farm. I know I don't look this old. I was never a mall Santa. I've been at State Farm almost 27 years, all right? And that sounds crazy to say. So I also was a communications major in college, but I had an Atari when I was young and a Nintendo, right? So I liked computers. I took basic programming classes prior to even going to college. But I'm like, you know what? That computer programming stuff, we were teaching Fortran and Pascal, right? Don't even know what those are, do you? Yeah, so really old languages, like punch card days, right? And I didn't want to learn that. So I thought communications, that's kind of cool. So I did that and then realized I couldn't support myself and my family. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go do something in communications. So I worked at a publishing company. I worked at a radio station. I did things in the communications field. Went to State Farm because I'm like a Fortune 50 company. I get to do really cool things and have multiple careers, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I had the opportunity. I went into State Farm, handled claims. I was on the business side for several years, and I might talk about that later too. Because thinking about how do you get into a company, you don't have to necessarily just get into the IT space, right? There's ways you can get into the business side and move your way into IT, like I did. So I handled claims for many years, and then moved Y2K. Got me moved into our systems department and in that space. And in that time, I've had many roles. So I've been a developer. I've coded COBOL, PL1. I did not do any Fortran or Pascal, by the way. Learned Java, learned .NET, learned VB. Right? I haven't learned Python yet, by the way. So I'm getting there. And through that time, I had lots of different software developer paths that I took and had many careers at State Farm. Today, I'm responsible for our Microsoft products at State Farm. So that has nothing to do with development. It has to do with implementing SaaS solutions, software as a service solutions, right? So think M365, think Teams, that type of stuff. So I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later, but many different career paths you can take in a company, especially a larger company like State Farm. So
I think we need to step back just for a second. How many people know what Y2K is, since two of us mentioned it? It was when the world was going to end in 1999 when it rolled over to 2000 because of these two-digit numbers, the 99 to 00. And needless to say, you're all here because it didn't blow up. The world was fine. No missiles got launched, no financial crisis or anything like that. But it did get me my job because when Pegasus, where I met Slade, was hiring, they were looking for people to kind of make some changes to some of their systems. So it was a career path for me. There's always going to be things happening in the world that will open up doors. You just got to pay attention to them. So let's kind of go back to the panel and tell us your first technology job. How did you find out about it? And what did you say in your interview that got you your job, if you can remember back that far?
So I guess I'll go first. I'll actually choose MasterCard, which is kind of my second one, because I was building computers, like I said, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I was doing web design on my own. HTML, Java, CSS, the full gamut there for businesses. Probably whenever I got hired. And I think the biggest thing that I had done was I was doing a ton of self-study at the time on Linux, which was new, which is now no longer new, right? But it was new at the time. I didn't know how impactful that would be. I would just be a hobbyist in the evenings. That's what I would do, is just mess with Linux and program and do whatever I wanted to do in the evenings. Well, at MasterCard, what landed me my job in their software development department was the fact that I knew Linux. Even though I didn't have experience with Solaris, which is a Unix operating system from Sun Microsystems at the time, they were transitioning everything to Linux. I had no idea going into the interview that was going to be that important. So that was mine.
I'll start, or I'll tell you mine. I guess the first thing I would tell you is, as you graduate and you go start looking for that job, do not get discouraged if you don't land a job straight away from college. That was my experience. I graduated spring of 1993 at the tail end of a recession, and I had really didn't have any IT experience. I didn't do internships, nothing like that. I didn't prepare myself well to market myself against competing students. And many of the tools and disciplines that we used back then to find jobs don't exist anymore. We used to pound the pavement, write letters, that kind of stuff. The internet didn't exist. LinkedIn wasn't there. And so it was a lot of letter writing, lots of college, opportunities, that kind of stuff. So I spent probably 3 months looking for a job. Finally landed one. A couple of opportunities popped up. They were opening. Anybody ever heard of the MGM Grand Hotel? That was just opening back then, or reopening actually. Landed an opportunity there. But the one I took was actually with a bankrupt airline called America West Airlines, who bought another bankrupt airline, US Air, who bought another bankrupt airline called American, and now that's who they are. So at any rate, it was a gold mine over there. How did I land that opportunity? What I would say is, I guess I'll talk about. Are we talking about the interviewing process yet?
Go for it.
All right, we'll talk about the interviewing process. So the first interview was with human resources, and that was basically, I think we call them talent acquisition today. That was over the telephone, and it was the weed out. Everybody's probably experienced one. Pretty easy interview. Second interview was lunch I lived in Tucson, came up here to have lunch with the manager in Tempe. And of course, that manager was looking for soft skills, wanted to see if I was going to be a good fit for his team, and assess personality traits, et cetera, et cetera. The third and final interview occurred the following day, and it was with the team, and it was a panel, the dreaded panel interview, right? You got the entire team grilling the hell out of you, and I would say for someone with little practical knowledge outside of a few programs at school and a few things that I did for the accounting firm, I was completely out of my league, right? They grilled me about the nuances of programming. They grilled me about questions that they knew would trip me up because I had none of that experience. And really, they were just trying to rattle me to see how I handled those types of situations. They basically wanted to understand how I would problem solve something. So we did whiteboard sessions. I mean, it was all morning. In the end, I would have given myself a B on the technical part of the interview, right? I was just okay, right? And it wasn't because I actually got the job, and it wasn't because I was any more technical than any of the other candidates. Confidence and those soft skills won the day, right? I was able to clearly articulate what I had to offer and map it to their needs. But more importantly, finding that common ground helped, right? Everybody in that room was a gearhead. And throughout the conversation, our common interest of classic cars permeated the interview. And they even treated me to lunch, and we went to lunch. The boss had a 1973 Dodge 426 Hemi Challenger, and it was awesome. So it was a really fun experience. And I would just encourage you to make sure that you're taking opportunities to practice those soft skills and to communicate with people. It's not all about, I would tell you these jobs, yeah, they're about technology, but they're also about people. That's a very important part of it.
Slade, I love your story, and I've been on a lot of those panels that have probably grilled folks, right? And so those are the things we're looking for. It's that soft skills. Yes, I want to know your logic. Yes, I want to know if you can draw on a whiteboard and tell me how you think through a problem. That is, to me and to us, more important than I know Java and Python and blah, 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 right? We expect you know that stuff, right? You came to a great program like GCU. They didn't pay me to say that, by the way. And you have those skills. We expect you to have those skills. I want to know how you think. I want to know how you act under pressure. I want to know how you work with a team, right? Those are the important skills. How you communicate, right? Okay, we're IT folks. We don't communicate the best, do we? I mean, we're not typically extroverts, are we? No, thank you for whoever said that, right? And so, but you have to be, right? You have to work in a team. That's the environment I work in, and I know that's probably what these two gentlemen work in as well. So those are the things we're looking for. So let me actually talk about my first interview as well, because I was thinking about this when Robert sent me this question, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to relate my experience to students of today. But as I thought about it, I'm like, my experience was very similar to what we do today. So I was going in as a developer. So I had a logic test, right? Can you think logically? I had that HR interview, right? That, okay, can this guy talk himself out of a box? Well, yes, I could, right? So it was that first, you get through that first stage, right? And can he code? Can he do, so there's coding assessment, that type of thing. That was my first interview. Well, I look at what we do today, not all that different, right? So we're going to send you, at least State Farm does it this way. We're going to send you hey, do this video interview, the dreaded video interview, right? I got to stare at a camera and pretend like I'm talking to somebody, and I'm not talking to anybody, right? So, and it's going to be behavior-based questions. Tell me about a time where you screwed something up and how did you recover? That type of thing, right? So be prepared for that. There is a coding assessment, right? So be prepared for that. For us, you get to choose your coding language. You're welcome. Right? So if you like Python, code in Python. You like Java, code in Java. You like, I don't know. I don't think we do COBOL, by the way, but Visual Basic. I think Visual Basic's actually on there, as a matter of fact. And then you get through that, and then it's about talking to the team who's looking for somebody. Right? So each team or each group or each area, depending on the area that's hiring, is looking for different skills or different qualifications. They're also looking for, do you fit with my team? Right? So those things are important. It's like this classic car connection, or is there some other connection there with the team? So be thinking about that. Don't discount some of those other connection opportunities. Okay.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what you said too, it's I've been on numerous panel interviews, interviewing folks and everything else, and everything that you said rings completely true. So it is more about how you've arrived to the answer than what the answer is. So you're expected in some cases to not know the answer to the question, and that's okay. I think that's the biggest thing to understand whenever you go into the interviews. It is impossible for you to know all the technology that their budgets give them access to. You won't know it. However, you will likely understand the base concepts around this technology. Nobody might be asking you to know specifically CrowdStrike, right? But you might know EDR. You might know IDS. All of that translates. And I think it's just important to understand that the concepts that you learn translate to a lot more than you probably realize.
So I'll give you a little bit about my story too. So we're going back to the Y2K, and I found it in the newspaper. I found my job was listed there. And the description talked about having to know this thing called XML, which back then was relatively new. So I did what we heard up here. I just kind of did it on my own, self-studied it, went into the interview, and they were impressed that I had done this on my own, got the job. I've never done XML at Pegasus. It was just one of those things that because I showed a passion for learning something on my own, I got the job. Once I was there, I basically had to do something that I never knew how to do. So I had to learn my job. And when you start looking at job descriptions nowadays, they've got like 1,000 different things they expect you to know on day one. So back to the panel, my guess is at some point you had to learn your job. How do you go about learning your job, and what kind of support do companies give you? Because we're going to have an imposter syndrome, right? When you start a job, you don't know everything. And a lot of people feel they're going to get fired within a week because you don't. So how do companies support you, and how do you support yourself to grow?
So yeah, sure. I think for me it's professional development. So even if you get certifications or anything else, it's always I always ask that question: what's next? What concept do I want to learn? Especially in cybersecurity, it is so broad. There's a million things that you can pick to dive into. It can be vulnerability management. It can be pen testing. It can be audit. Whatever you want. You can even take and look at it through a different lens. My company in particular uses things like Pluralsight, LinkedIn Learning, things like that. I use Udemy myself. YouTube is a great place to find all sorts of good and bad information, but mostly good. As long as you find sources from reputable speakers in the field that you're looking to be going into, then it's going to be a pretty solid resource to learn from. Video-wise, but I think a lot of the online learning platforms for me, that's been my primary probably for the last 5 to 6 years easily. Either Udemy or any of the online platforms, or even going back to school. So I've done that too.
So I'm gonna talk about a first experience. I think the majority of the class knows what to do. I would tell you that I was trained by my peers. So, just absorption. There were a lot of old timers there. And again, yeah, we were programming in COBOL and this new thing called C++ at the time. And the interesting part of that job is it was kind of the good opportunity of it is it was a jack of all trades job. So we did programming. We also had to manage multiple networks. We had to manage building servers, that kind of stuff. And so it was a really good opportunity. We didn't totally excel at anything, but we knew a lot. And I think it's a good way to actually understand where you want to take your career path. When I worked at America West, we used to call it America West University because they would train the heck out of you. And I would take advantage of any formal training as well. That we mentioned stuff you can find on the internet, et cetera, but anything that your companies are offering is like gold.
Yeah, so I'm going to hit on agree with everything my colleagues here said next to me. So I'm going to hit on a couple different things. So one is a lot of companies, I know State Farm for sure, really support education and continue education. So Robert knows this. I'm actually an MBA student here at GCU. Online, by the way, so you won't see me roaming around campus or riding one of those longboards or whatever, that type of stuff. You don't want that. But my company's paying for that, right? So pretty cool, huh? Right? So if you want to get AWS certified, my company will pay for that, right? If you're in that job, right? So that continuing education is important. And it's not just a State Farm thing. I'm sure lots of other companies do that as well. So what I wrote down, I was writing down some things about, well, what's some advice? So learn, and learn, right? Those are my top 10 advice pieces, right? So always have that growth mindset, always want to learn. That's key. That's key because technology changes so fast. You guys have heard this 1,000 times, I'm sure. Technology changes so fast. What you learn your freshman year may not even be relevant by the time you're a senior or in the job market. So again, that's why it's important to have more skills than just I know this particular technology. I was going to say something else in it. Oh, how did I learn? I think that was the other part of your question. And I'm going to probably reiterate a lot of the things you just said. It's a lot of on the job, right? The systems and the complexity. I think you talked about it too. The complexity of the systems that we supported. There is no way that Robert could teach me that at GCU or any other university for that matter. It was all about learning from those who had been working on those systems for years and years and years. right? So it was about opening my ears and closing my mouth a lot, right? And making lots of mistakes. I took down statefarm.com one day all by myself. Yeah, it was a great day. But did I learn something? Absolutely. Don't do that again. Right? And I tell that story at work all the time, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're still employed, and you're a director, and you're like, yeah, it's because I learned and I applied that." So that is, again, I feel like I'm being a dad up here, but that is the best advice: is just be open and listen and learn as you go. That's how I learned. That's how I've moved through my career over 27 years.
Yeah, and I will say I have a story similar to what Chad just said. Well, at Pegasus, Hotelbook was our booking engine. I deleted all the images out of a directory on that system. Yeah. And then you have to find somebody who can fix it. I don't think it was Slade that fixed it, but I will call him a mentor because he was there before me, and I learned a lot from just talking to people in the various departments. So you were in system administration, you did all the data storage stuff. So I gleaned it. It wasn't part of my job, but I was always willing to learn something new. So as we're talking about learning something new, my guess is as you learn, it allows you to move up the career ladder, right? So I don't think anybody is in the same job you started with, whether it was last year, 20 years ago, whatever it happens to be. So kind of explain how you use your foot, whether it's go from one company to the other one with promotions, or in Chad's case, 27 years or whatever it was, working up in the same company. So we'll go through that. Be prepared to answer questions, because as soon as we're done with this round, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So here's your chance to start interacting with our panel here. So what's your career progression?
Oh man. So for me, 25 years, I would say my average tenure at a company has been 2 to 3 years at a time. So that sounds terrible, but it's actually not. So whenever I obviously first started, I was basically just a computer tech and building web pages. I went from that to a software engineer at MasterCard. Software engineering at MasterCard led me to web security before cybersecurity was even a thing. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was doing code reviews. I was doing, IDS systems. I was doing, payment systems with rainbow cards and Encipher devices and all sorts of archaic stuff now. But it led me to the security path, right? That cybersecurity path is kind of what jump-started me everywhere else. So I wanted to learn more about healthcare. So I left finance, I left MasterCard and went to work for Mercy right at the dawn of HIPAA, which if anyone's read anything on HIPAA, when it first started, it was definitely a very eye-opening experience for these companies. I like to say if you go to healthcare, be prepared to take a step back about 10 years in technology, and that was pretty accurate at the time. Everything that I was doing at MasterCard was bleeding cutting edge, right? So I had to really reach back and look at where MasterCard was doing things 5 years ago, they were doing, it was new to them, right? So it was a completely different learning experience. Then moving from there, I wanted to learn more about, managed services. So I went to work for a company called Savvis, worked there for 6 years. Learning everything about the managed service business, everything from a company that would host your web servers to your routers to everything to their data centers. They had data centers across the world. I would talk with technicians in Japan, Ireland, and New York on a daily basis, sometimes all three in the same day. So depending on what shift I worked, right? So it was very interesting. From there, I actually went back to financial services, went to Schwab. I worked at Charles Schwab for a couple of years, decided I wasn't ready for that much because it's bleeding edge, cutting edge, which means you always have to know it. There is some stress that comes along with that. I said, I want to take a step back and switch verticals. And I went into education, actually. I worked for Apollo Group for a good number of years, securing their online platforms or their student platform, their learning systems. And then decided to do consulting. I wanted to do something else. So it's always been whatever's next, whatever's new for me. So, and now I'm back to finance with MUFG. So back to the finance world.
Insurance finance isn't so bad, is it?
No.
Okay. So I'll take next here. So don't get me wrong, 27 years at the same company is not the same career over those 27 years, right? So these guys talk about, different companies and different, right? Not me, right?
Yeah, and I should add too that it wasn't always to move up the ladder either at some of these companies. So sometimes it was literally for me, it was a peace of mind, and it had to do with my commute. Like for example, when I worked at Mercy, it was great. My commute was like 25 minutes. Well, then they moved our building to a different part of St. Louis at the time, so my commute went from 25 minutes to an hour and a half each way. So, which is spending 3 hours in the car in traffic. Believe me, it's brutal. I think I lasted 9 months, and then had to switch to something else. So that was a parallel path.
Yeah, that's a great story too. So I have had probably 15 careers in one company, right? So I started out as I think I said earlier, I started out on the business side, and partially because I wasn't an IT guy when I started that type of thing, but I learned the business. I learned claims, right? Boring old claims, but that still benefits me to this day because I know the business we're in as a company, right? And so I've been in those shoes. Customer facing and all that kind of stuff. That's important as you think about what we do in IT. I started off as a developer, right? I love development. I loved solving problems. I love finding the bug at midnight and solving it and testing it and having it work, right? Those are things that excited me. But I wanted to do more, and so I did education and training for a while. Bringing in new hires and teaching how to code COBOL, by the way. But we did teach Java too, so and had an opportunity to kind of pursue my passions there. So talk about multiple careers. I probably had like 6 careers by that point, and then had an opportunity to move here to the Phoenix area. I grew up in Central Illinois, by the way. State Farm's headquarters is in Bloomington. You don't know where that's at, but halfway between St. Louis and Chicago. And had an opportunity to come here and work in infrastructure. Well, wait, what's a software developer doing in infrastructure? Well, again, we were using software development. Infrastructure is code. You think about what we do in the world of AWS and some things like that, right? So it was very important to have those skills. And so a whole different career path. And maybe I did mention what I do today. So I have responsibility for all of our Microsoft products, right? So a little bit of infrastructure, a little bit of software development, a little bit of working on the business side, and it crosses all of our business units and business areas, our customers, our internal customers, our agents, our associates, all of that. So I always look for opportunities every 2 to 3 years, like you just talked about, to build on the skills that I already had, and how can I use those skills to learn something new and then contribute in a different way. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I bet you have a fairly similar story building on skills, right?
Yeah, similar. I would say it's important to chase your passions. To be quite honest with you, for the first, I'd say half of my career, I wasn't even looking to climb any type of ladder. I was chasing technologies, right? And tried to follow technologies that interested me, but that were still relevant. I mean, you always want to try to remain relevant. I like I said, I had a wonderful opportunity at America West Airlines and ended up working over at Motorola for a stint, and then joined this Pegasus Solutions. And those were all, they were all systems administration jobs. However, back when those jobs were in vogue in that particular vertical, storage administration was something that was really coming into practice. And I basically became a storage administrator, and that led to the next big opportunity for me at PayPal. I worked at PayPal for, I don't know, 12 plus years in that field, and that actually, I would say, as you get those, there's going to be, and I keep harping on soft skills. Soft skills open up doors too. Some of those soft skills were noticed, and I got into management. Right, completely departed from the technical side of it, and became a manager and directed a lot of important activity at PayPal.com. And so I would tell you another important thing too: find a mentor. If you have something that you want to aspire to, find somebody who's doing it. And you've probably heard this before, but it's real. And every time I've ever had success at moving into a different position or learning something like longboarding around campus, find somebody who's doing it, right? And get some tips from them. And, it's not about coaching, but getting tips from them and them, kind of nudging you in the right direction. That's kind of, that's actually where I'm at right now in my current job. I was a very demanding customer of a number of products. And I mean, like, very aggressively demanding. And I wanted to take that experience and try to make this product that I'm very passionate about better. And so I joined a product management team at the company that I'm at today at Oracle to try to do that. So looking at IT from a completely different lens, I'm actually now at somebody who markets a product. Do I have a couple more minutes?
Sure.
So I just kind of wanted to round out a couple of things. Basically the other thing that we were talking about was, should students, what should students do to make themselves more marketable? I think you all know what you need to do, right? Be passionate about things, persistence and perseverance. But really, these are just some guiding factors that I talk about a lot and that I've learned over the years. I don't think there's anything such thing as luck. Luck's what happens when preparation meets opportunity, right? I think we all know that. And marketing yourself is way more important than we think. Leverage the services here at school and elsewhere, and the knowledge of others to showcase your skill sets and have lots of confidence, right? And I would tell you, first impressions are critical, right? Take the tools and opportunities to make them as good as you can, because sometimes you don't get that second opportunity. And character speaks volumes. And prospective employers do fact check potential candidates on social media, right? Try to glean some impression. I do that to try to glean what their true character is, or at least what it is out on the web. And I already mentioned having a mentor, right? Don't settle and just be passionate about what you're chasing, because you're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing a job for 8 to 12 hours of the day, 5 to 7 days a week, and you've gotta really like what you're doing, or you'll be miserable.
I think you just scared them all. They're all going to drop out of the technology program because they don't want to work 7 days a week for 12 hours a day. And that's us. Most of us started off of that way.
You know what's interesting about that, though, is that I think for me, it was, how did I know I wanted to really be in IT? I didn't notice the time moving, right? So I didn't notice the clock. So I wasn't punching a clock and worried about, I have to be off at 5. I didn't realize it was already 8. That's whenever I knew.
Wait a second. How many of you are working 7 days a week now? Okay, maybe not. All right, sorry. I don't know.
I guess so, yeah. So I have a survey. It's an online one you can do while we're going through the rest of them. I think that should... It's a QR code, so if you want to scan that, there's like 4 questions. We'll get to the data at the end of it. But while you're doing that, what questions do you have for our panel? Who's got a question they want to share? And I'll repeat the question after you say it, but if you speak up loud, so go ahead.
So my question is, when first looking for your job, you've already graduated, what type of resources do you look for? What kind of people's contact information do you look for? Is it a lot of face-to-face networking, or is it mostly done online through emails or phone or video conferences? You could just explain that a little more.
So I think to summarize, is it okay if they stalk you to find jobs?
I think it's okay as long as you've been through the recruiting process, right? So typically, what I will get for a candidate that's going to interview, I might have them reach out to me on LinkedIn just to connect, and that's because usually my profile is pretty private, so that's why. I have no problem doing that. That's not a big deal. I've never had somebody reach out and message and ask me about the job or anything like that, but I think my biggest advice would be to make sure you read the job requirement, because we will definitely ask. questions around those. And as far as, contacting or whatnot, LinkedIn for me is fine, for example. But I've never had anybody do anything else. Have you?
Little bit. So you want to follow me on LinkedIn? Go right on ahead, because what I do is I will sometimes, at least State Farms, is I'll repost job opportunities. Right. I'm not a first line hiring manager anymore, but I will pay attention and repost job opportunities. Yep. So be watching for that. So LinkedIn is a good place. And then my other thing is there's lots, and Robert, you probably have tons of them, is lots of local groups you can get involved in, right? Yep. So like community groups, coding groups, and the words aren't coming to me here, but get involved in some of those interest groups that are in the community. That's how you network, right? I tell my people to do that. Well, guess what? My people are at those groups. You might hear something in there and go, oh, there's an opportunity over here. Let me go out and look at careers.statefarm.com and check that out, right?
Yep. That's super, super solid point. So there's definitely tons of activities out there. That is a very, very good point.
I also, I would also tell you, be persistent. You mentioned, we were talking about LinkedIn. It doesn't happen as often now, but when I was at PayPal, I was stalked a lot. And I actually did hire somebody who stalked me. And it was because they answered. Okay, so they knew what I did. They actually took the time to research it. They weren't just randomly looking for an opportunity at that company, and they understood what our team did. So they were able to match their skill sets to what we thought we would need. And we weren't even hiring for a job at the time. So I would tell you, check out people on LinkedIn, try to friend them, and make sure that you've done your homework before you do it.
Yeah, I think the final bit that you just kind of keyed on as well is know what the company does. So I've had tons of candidates come in and not know what we do. That's usually a big red flag right there. They have to know why they're interviewing and what the company does, essentially, what products they're bringing to market or what service we're providing. Yeah, they have to know that.
Yeah, and you better be able to sell the skills or the value that you bring to the table, right? You don't want to just say, hey, I want a job. What's in it for me? You need to market yourself very, very well. It's super, super important. And I would tell you that a lot of jobs that are out there are specifically for recent college graduates, but most of them aren't. Most of them, you're competing against people that are already in the marketplace. So, I would definitely think about that side of the coin too.
Yeah, and I'd say along with that, be honest with your skill set. Whatever your skill set is and whatever's on your resume, make sure that you can actually deliver on that. Because when it comes to panel interviews, that is what your panel is going to base it on. If you say that you know something on your resume, you should know it.
So normally our panel sticks around a little bit after, and I have to say I cringe when one of the students, I'm not saying any of you have done this, walk up and say, what does your company do? I mean, this is your chance. If you don't know what these companies do, you should be on your phone right now, and like underneath the table, trying to figure out what they do. So when you can say, "Hey, at Oracle, you make databases." I mean, I know that's very rudimentary. You do a lot more than that stuff nowadays, but don't expect them to answer your basic questions. Also on LinkedIn, your first message to the person goes, "Hey, I want to apply for a job." You could say, "Here's what job I want to apply for," but a better conversation starter would be, "I'm interested in your career and how you got where you are." Have a conversation, and then don't ask for a job for maybe the first 6 months. Have a little conversation back and forth, build that relationship, because when I was a hiring manager, that first message was, "I want a job. What are you hiring for?" That's not my job to find you a job. So be careful how you get those conversations going. I'm going to switch that over. What other questions do we have? Yeah.
How important is actually having a degree?
That's a loaded question since we're here at GCU, but I'll let you answer. You can answer it as honestly as you like.
So actually, it's funny you asked that question, because I was on a panel Robert, how long ago was that? A year ago or so? We talked about
Like, wow.
degrees versus
That's like-
certifications,
Right.
right? So remember, I said earlier, I expect that somebody coming in knows programming and knows coding and knows logic and can do that, right? So you learn way more than just that here at GCU or any institution, right? GCU is not paying me, by the way, right? So it's all those skills that you learn here to be a well-rounded person is also what I'm looking for. So the degree is important. Doesn't mean you can't go get a certification and be competitive, but just know that a lot of your competition is going to have that degree. And I'm looking for that well-rounded, those soft skills that Slade talked about, all of that. You get all of that in a degree program that you don't necessarily get out of, I know how to code Python and I have an AWS certification and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to leave it vague enough, a consultant answer almost, of it kind of depends on what you want to do and how far you want to go. So not required, right? State Farm, we don't require you to have an IT degree to be an IT. Obviously, I'm a case of that. But it's going to give you that edge and it's going to give you that well-rounded picture. It's a great question, though, and it's a very hot question in the industry right now, for sure.
I think from a cybersecurity perspective, I'll just leave it at that. So it kind of changes. So, and I'll speak because I didn't have one whenever I started. I actually didn't get my degree until 2 years ago, surprisingly enough. So I didn't have one for 20 something years. However, what it took me 20 years to figure out, and I should have done it a long time ago, is that it does become a barrier whenever you're moving up. So, it literally becomes a showstopper, whether you're going into different companies or even if you stay within the same company, they will require certain levels of degrees, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, etc. Right. You'll also see on the job postings, I think most of them nowadays, that they require either a degree or X number of years of experience. And they are very, very particular on the number of years. So they don't, most of my company's postings, if they're looking for a bachelor's degree, if they want an experience equivalent, it's double, it's 8 years or more, which means that you're likely already at a senior level in your field for whatever it is that you're doing. It's not to say that you cannot get a job, without a degree in whatever those fields are. Certainly, there's a lot of very small areas within cyber where degrees are not as needed. Penetration testing is one of those. If you're testing bugs and code and everything else, and you're attending Black Hat every year, and you're going to DEF CON, and you're doing the networking that these guys have talked about from before, then a degree may not be as needed, especially if you live in an area where you're going to Silicon Valley and you're around a bunch of venture capital where you have a lot of startups. I mean, it may not be required. I wouldn't recommend that, just saying. Certainly, if you have the opportunity to finish your degree, get it done, get it out of the way, because eventually you're going to have to do it anyhow. That's kind of how I look at it.
So just one thing, because so we were talking before. So MUFG does have positions posted for entry-level roles.
Yep.
They also, we were talking, you actually hire them maybe before they graduated and let them work through their final year. So you are hiring people without degrees based on
Correct.
something, but you really want them to keep pursuing that. I mean, right?
Correct. Yeah. So to give you an example, the last intern that we had in my particular group, I was assigned as his mentor. He was going to ASU. He was on his last semester. So it was his summer before, I guess, his final semester of college. But we hired him. He did a great job in his internship. It wasn't just documentation, as some people allude to. He was writing PowerShell, doing desired state config with Azure. It was pretty substantial. So the stuff we were having him work on, we ended up hiring him in part-time, so that way he could finish his degree program. And then whenever he was done and completed, we converted him to full-time. So it was a win-win, really.
Yeah, so I think to sum it up, it depends. Depends on the person, depends on the job. And I would tell you, I've hired people that have never, I think I hired one guy that he had a high school diploma, but he was a super smart and very crafty coder, right? So it just depends.
So let's take a look at our data for our polls here, and we'll see if we have any insight that our panel can help share with us. So the first question was, when do you decide to pursue a technology degree? It looks like most people decide, well, not most, but 40% decide when they're looking for a college. So you don't necessarily know what degree you want to take, but when you're maybe identified Grand Canyon, you saw the programs they were available. And we had a discussion earlier when you decided. Does this align with what you would expect, or no? We got a couple of head shaking no.
I I didn't want to be in tech. I mean, let's be honest, this was not where I saw myself, right? I saw myself communications, that type of world. Did I always have an interest? Did I always kind of pursue that interest? Did I realize that at some point in 2000? Yes, I did. But when I was looking at colleges or in high school or in middle school, it just wasn't. It wasn't on my radar, right? So it's back to that topic we talked about earlier about always wanting to learn, right? So that's how I got interested in and got there. But yeah, I'm a little surprised actually.
For me, I would probably be in high school part for sure. Is probably whenever I was going to pursue something in technology, because I was sneaking into my friend's programming class that I wasn't really part of, but the teacher still allowed me to do it. So I was learning Pascal at the time, and then C. But yeah, that's where I fall.
I'd say tail end of college for me. I was definitely a late bloomer. And I'm not even quite sure that I still want to. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So
Me either, by the way.
No, I have no idea still.
This one is kind of an interesting question because we have some of the faculty here is looking at ways to identify people that are going to be successful in technology careers. And one of the things we found is a lot of people that are in technology have artistic skill sets, whether it's art or music or something like that. And you're kind of seeing that here with like 60, 70, 75 or 70% of the people have some artistic skill. So does this agree to what you think?
It definitely tracks. Yeah. For me, it's definitely on the very artistic. I draw, I paint, I play tons of different musical instruments. It definitely tracks for me. Most of the people that I've worked with over the years, same thing. They've either played a musical instrument it's at some level, or they draw, or they paint, or they've got some kind of crafty creative outlet.
I love this question. I was not expecting this. So I was a music minor in school. I had a scholarship to sing. Don't you dare ask me to sing, because I can't do it today.
I think when you opened that door,
no,
I think
no. Yeah, I played trumpet all through. So I love this question because I do talk to a lot of folks who have that outlet, right? I was actually in a meeting, just a short story. I was in a meeting the other day, and a guy's like, "Hey, have you checked out my website?" This was another state farmer. I'm like, "No," and he sends me his website. He's an artist. He like paints, and I actually bought a piece of art from him. It's so cool. So yeah, I mean, I think this is awesome, and these results don't surprise me at all, actually.
yeah, I'm the descender. I'm not super artistic. I sing in the shower, if that counts.
We'll trust you.
Sing to the dog. But I did hire a music major, so they're definitely out there.
Yeah, if you talk to some of your instructors, we should be able to put a band together with our instructors. We've got people that are drums, guitar, piano. Is Professor Jackson in here yet? No, oh yeah, there he is. Music, right? Yeah, so I don't know, see if I can go back here. We got like probably time for one more. Anybody know how I can get backwards? Oh, we'll leave on this one because this is always a good one. Why did you choose technology? And this, we'll see if this aligns to what I would expect, but that's kind of cool to watch it like change that quickly. Okay, if it stops right there, oh no, passion caught up. So actually, it changes. What are your opinions as we watch this chart change?
I think the opinions are pretty close. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. There was passion there, and you got to eat, and IT is pretty lucrative. So I have to agree with the first two. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
I definitely would agree with the passion side. Not so much the money side, because when I started, I was actually making $7 an hour. It was terrible pay for what I was doing. But I was learning tons of and getting tons of experience, which I guess paid in dividends other ways, but certainly passion and definitely the challenge for me. It's always about what's learning, what am I going to learn next, or how's this work, or how does that work?
If you have the passion in IT and technology, the money will come. That's my opinion. So that's why when I talk about IT and careers in IT, you got to have that passion, because that money will follow it. And so do something you love, right? And so if you've got that passion, then the rest of this will. The challenge is great. I love that challenge is 20%. Remote work's such a hot topic right now, so I'm glad to see that actually was not all the way over there. But yeah, keep that passion for sure.
I'd say for the folks that definitely answer challenge there, the only advice I could give those that answer that is be okay to fail, because you're going to fail a lot. And you may fail spectacularly. I took down MasterCard.com twice in the same day. So
It's amazing anything stays up and running with us up there controlling these things.
The worst part of it was it was during the World Cup, where they had paid for tremendous amounts of advertising. So yeah, I thought I was on a different computer. I swear, I thought I was on a different terminal.
It's always the dev or the QA one instead of production, right?
I was on prod.
State Farm.
Yep.
When I was Rob's peer, I took down Hilton.com. So we all
It
make
always
mistakes.
happens.
It is amazing when we get through it. Okay, we got 30 seconds. The last bit of advice you have for this group of people as they start looking at that career, those internships. So what bullet item do you have just to share as we wrap it up?
I think my biggest one is going to be build your network and learn everything you can and be a lifelong learner. Network is paramount. Those events, those people you talk to, the people you meet, that's where you really, really need to focus, because the technology stuff comes later.
Yeah, I would echo that exactly. I wish I'd have gone first now, but that network is important. That being a lifelong learner, absolutely important. You've heard all of our stories up here, and we're all lifelong learners, not just in the craft that we're in and the technologies, but as humans. And again, think about me. I'm taking my MBA at almost 50 years old, right? So be that lifelong learner. The other thing I would say is find opportunities to show off your skills. So find a community organization or volunteer organization or a church or something that's looking for some technology help. Great opportunities there. Build your portfolio, build your resume in that way.
I would say be serious about your career. Don't float. Don't let just the opportunities that happen to present themselves, present themselves. Be very focused on your career, and be passionate. Passion was I think number 2 up there. It really should be number 1. I mean, that's if you don't have it, you're not going to be successful. And I think these guys already said it. We should never stop learning.
Yeah, and pay attention for those opportunities to pop up, because they are going to. And if you ignore them, you're not going to have an opportunity to follow the opportunity. So that'll wrap up our panel. We'll have another panel in March. The next one, I think, is going to be for students that are graduating and how they entered the workforce. You'll hear the other people. You hear people with decades and decades and decades of experience up here. Nice, right? So next time you'll hear from people that have no experience how they got their first job. That'll be the panel. Thank you for coming. I think our panel will stick around for a little while, answer questions. So if you want to come up and network with them, thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.